Over the past year, a leading group of manufacturers had made impressive progress scaling four industrial revolution technologies between the manufacturing plant environment. The World Economic Forum recognized these factories as part of its global Lighthouse networks. Reportero Industrial magazine talked with Francisco Betti. He is the head of the platform for shaping the future of advanced manufacturing and production. The platform set the global agenda on the future of operation and helped stakeholders incubate new partnerships to boost productivity and economic growth. Francisco, thank you so much to accept our invitation to be part of the edition of Reportero Industrial. To start, I want to ask you, what is the purpose of having a global lighthouse network? And until today, what will be the main learnings in the implementation of technology for the fourth industrial revolution?
The Global Lighthouse Network it's such an amazing initiative, right? We launched it in 2018, and the main reason of why we launched it is because we realized through some work that we did in collaboration with McKinsey & Company that most companies, most manufacturing companies were stuck in what we define pilot purgatory. Now, what is a pilot purgatory? It's the fact that companies are investing significantly in new technologies, but they are struggling to translate that technology into practical use cases that then get deployed on the shop floor and that deliver significant operational and financial impact, right? So most companies, and actually in the latest assessment we did, I think that it goes up to, and the survey we did, it goes up to 75% of companies that still acknowledge that they are stuck in the piloted phase when it comes to the adoption of advanced manufacturing use cases and solutions, or Industry 4.0 solutions, as we call them. Now, the good news is that there's a small percentage, about 25–30%, who is already seeing the results of their investments in technologies and has been able to deliver, operational and financial impact and scales by transforming both their facilities and value chain. So the Lighthouse concept is very simple. We went out and we designed a process through which we are able to scan the manufacturing landscape and identify those companies who are most advanced when it comes to the adoption of fourth industrial revolution technologies, and that can prove, a track record and a significant demonstrated impact through the adoption of those technologies. Now, once we identify them, and there's an independent panel in place who does the review and the selection, so it's not the forum, selecting them, but there's an independent panel we rely on, and that panel brings some of the most advanced experts in the manufacturing space. But once companies go through the process and get selected and appointed, then they join this very exclusive network that has 69 companies and facilities, and as of today, and they engage in a very unique learning journey. I think that what is great about these companies is not just that they are recognized as lighthouses and they're front runners, but is that they are really, 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 opening up their facilities so that others can come and learn. In the past, we used to, visit Japanese companies to learn from lean manufacturing, Kaizen. Well, if you want to see and experience and learn what Industry 4.0 is about looks like, well, now you have a global map with the right dots and the right companies and facilities that you can visit to get inspired. So it's the value is not just the recognition, but it's the learning journey that we have created for the global manufacturing community around these lighthouses. Now, the second part of your question was about the learnings, and it's extremely rich because it's almost a collection of examples of what it means to drive digital transformation successful. And maybe the way to structure it is that there are first of all new benchmarks that all these companies are setting, right? If you look at some KPIs, whether it's on the operational efficiency, whether it's agility, flexibility, speed to market, but also on the sustainability fronts, right? They are all delivering amazing results. In some cases, we are even talking about, double figures, right? And percentage figures, right? When it comes to the impact that the use cases, for example, had on the operations, on the sustainability front, and so on. Now, it is important to highlight that it's not sort of maybe staying on the big picture, and then I will go a little bit more on the details. But what is extremely exciting is that all these companies are looking at their operations and their manufacturing facilities and their value chains as the foundations that will set their companies for innovation, success, and growth in the year to come. So by transforming their operations, they're able to connect operations with business models and innovate on the latter, right? So they're driving, by transforming their operations, they're driving also business model innovations, which is how they would be able to drive growth. So it's about, delivering operational excellence, reducing costs whenever possible, but also setting the foundations in order to make new and better products, to develop new type of services, to top up product with services, and so on. So I think that that's a major common and new learning that is coming out of the Lighthouses. The second one is that it's not just a technology play, but it's all about technology and people. So all Lighthouses are massively investing in upskilling and reskilling, and they were, most of them were able to create a sort of a pooling effect to technology. So they are not pushing new cases into the shop floor, but they are partnering with operators, with shop floor operators, shop floor engineers, and the research and development teams to develop the new use cases, right? And once those are ready, by default, they get adopted in a much easier way, and you don't have any resistance coming from the real users, which often are the shop floor operators. Now, another key characteristic on how they have structured their teams for success is that most of them have created cross-functional teams, bringing R&D, IT people, OT people who are working together to develop the most exciting solutions. And maybe the final point on that front is that, or a separate important point is that when you double click on some of the value that the use cases are delivering, they are all having a major impact on sustainability, right? Or at least we are starting to see many of those that at the same time that they digitize and improve operations, they reduce energy consumption, CO2 emissions, and we do have our very first net zero lighthouse in the network, by the way. So that's certainly a trend. So they are looking at sustainability as a key driver of resilience, and thanks to digital transformation, they're able to deliver. So final point, and I will stop there. I think that it's when it comes to the, to the expansion of their digital transformation, very often they started from the factories. Then they expand to entire value chains by connecting them end to end. And what we are seeing now is that companies are going beyond manufacturing, leveraging the learnings to transform other functions, whether it's procurement or other functions within the house. So you can argue that the network is expanding, not just in terms of the numbers of companies that we have in the network and facilities, but also we are having more and more end-to-end connected value chains that get recognized like houses. We will soon have those companies that have really rich scales because they transform multiple sites, multiple value chains they operate. And then we will also start seeing companies who are transforming operations beyond purely manufacturing, getting into procurement and other areas. But let me stop here and see if that's helpful, Diani.
In 2021, the Global Lighthouse Network welcomed 15 new lighthouses, which were the main features and innovation for the industry that you found in those, and what could Latin American industries learn to start that path of digital transformation?
Yeah, and let me maybe start from the last question. I think that Latin America has a lot to learn and a long way to go. And what is exciting is that we do have a few lighthouses in Brazil already, right? With Brazil, Mexico being certainly major hubs for manufacturing in Latin America. We are starting to see evidence of companies, being able to innovate and have significant results through digital transformation. Now, maybe three main comments, right? One is that digital transformation is not necessarily expensive, right? We have seen many companies leveraging even commercially available technologies in order to innovate. So we have an example of an SME who is using, commercial smartwatches that then were adapted to get real-time alerts from their machines and equipment right on the shop floor, and be able to do predictive maintenance, optimize maintenance interventions and so on, right? So the first concept is that don't always think about digital transformation industry 4.0 and something necessarily expensive, but because we are seeing more and more, a lot of innovations that get very creative and use commercially available technology or technology that may be already available in most facilities. And related to that, I think the second point is that Industry 4.0 is not just for the big players in the industry, but it's both for the large players and the SMEs, that very often, even large companies have been sourcing some of the most amazing innovations, from different places around the world. So we are seeing some of the large players in our network who are sourcing innovations from Latin America, Southeast Asia, and other locations in which they operate, and then have a system in place through which they can scale them and replicate them globally. Now, the third point is that I do believe that going forward, Industry 4.0 will be a key asset for manufacturers in Latin America to be able to stay competitive, right? The world is getting more and more competitive. Industry 4.0 is a trend that you cannot neglect. So I think the key question is, how do you develop in most Latin American countries an ecosystem that will help the companies accelerate the transition? And that requires, governments to play the role, facilitate and ease access to technology, but also partner with the private sector when it comes to retraining, upskilling efforts. We have seen the apprenticeship model being very successful in some countries. And also, you need academia and civil society played a major role, right? We do need people for Industry 4.0 success. We will need people to be moving from shop floor and universities or research institutes on a regular basis, back and forth. So how do you create a new type of collaboration with the academic? And we have great universities, amazing universities across all over Latin America. And civil society, because we are seeing in some countries, those who have heavily invested in Industry 4.0 as a driver of the transformation, that the future of manufacturing is not about automation, but it's about the right mixing between automation and workers augmentation. And that if companies can grow, be more efficient and grow, very often, they end up creating more jobs than the ones that get destroyed or that disappear because they become obsolete, right? So how do we bring labor unions on board and we get them to understand that there's probably a positive game in play here if we are able to all collaborate and take the right direction and leverage technology and put technology at the service of people, right, to improve operations. So those are probably the top three main topics that came to my mind. I think that the other recommendation, or not recommendation, but the other sort would be, there are and not only the forum, but there are multiple fora that companies and governments can leverage to learn globally, get access to insights coming from different places from around the world, but also to share with the rest of the world what are the things that they are doing. So that's where the forum can play the major role and hopefully contribute to accelerate digital transformation across the region. One more point is that we have what we call a global network of advanced manufacturing hubs. This is a global network of local communities that are spread all around the world, and we would love to have some of those or see some of those being formed and emerging in Latin America as well. We do have Brazil, who is actively engaged with starting with a hub in Sao Paulo that are expanding nationally and more broadly, and we would love to bring other countries on board on that journey as well. Okay. Happy to send you more information about this via email, so that you can complement or
Okay,
add
thank you.
links.
Other point is the last report that the Global Lighthouse Network showed that despite the COVID-19, factory have seen increased production and build resilience. Could this be understand the digitalization and the inclusion of technology at the way remain competitive and efficient? And based on the learnings of the network, what other technologies or trends need to be considered for the future?
No, absolutely, and I think that what was amazing. I mean, of course, we have been working closely with the lighthouses throughout the pandemic. I mean, all of them started to invest in Industry 4.0 technologies, fourth industrial revolution technology, much before the pandemic, and it's thanks to that they were able to be more resilient and navigate the crisis in a much better way than anybody else. So I think that the current crisis was a great stress test for all the lighthouses, and what we learned that they were all able to navigate it in a much better way that those companies who are just starting out on their digital transformation journey. Maybe 4 main learnings that come out, of the crisis and how lighthouses responded to the crisis. The first one is the need for every company to build agility and customer centricity. That means, recognizing that demand will be changing going forward, that you will need to respond to customer preferences in new and different ways, and that therefore you will need to adjust your production flows and capabilities, and you will need, to build in a new degree of flexibility when it comes to the design of your facilities and value chain, and that requires technology to play the major role, right? So it's this concept of agility, flexibility, and customer centricity that some of the lighthouses were able to deploy during the crisis, and that will be lean. It's something that will stay, that every company should be aspiring for going forward. The second one is the importance. I mean, it's a no-brainer, but it's the importance of supply chain resilience. It was a competitive advantage during the crisis. It will remain a competitive advantage going forward. If you look at the current global landscape, I think it is, and the different trends that are disrupting the world, I think that it's fair to assume that crises and disruptions will be happening more often and may have deeper consequences, whether they come from changing consumer demands, climate change, regulations, socioeconomic tensions, global tensions. Companies do need to think about how they build resilience, and lighthouses were able to do so by changing the strategies, right? By moving from different type of supply chain ecosystems, where becomes their supplier, thinking about regionalization, new shoring, and again, having the ability to be more flexible and agile, as I mentioned before. But the concept of supply chain resilience is the second major learning and trend that we will see staying beyond the pandemic. The third one is it's all around speed and productivity that can be achieved through new levels of both automation and augmentation. Augmentations, I mean workforce and augmentation. So again, I think that to be able to stay competitive, companies will need to find a right balance between automation and workforce augmentation, again through the adoption of new technology. And linked to that, I think that major efforts will be needed, which is something the lighthouses did in the past, in upskilling and reskilling. I think that will become the rule for every company in the manufacturing space. And finally, the fourth point is the concept of eco-efficiency, or the need to make sustainability a major driver of their digital transformation strategy. To stay competitiveness, to stay in business, companies will need to comply with new regulatory requirements on the sustainability front. We know that consumers are more and more pushing for sustainably sourced and manufactured products. So I think that that's something that it's going to be a must-have. And again, digital technologies are not only helping improve operations, but at the same time, as I mentioned before, they're helping reduce energy consumption, water consumption, reduce CO2 emissions, and hopefully build entire net zero facilities and value chains going forward. So those would be the four main learnings coming from the crisis. And to conclude, I think it's that, yes, companies were able, all lighthouses were able to navigate the crisis much better than those companies that are only at the very early stages of the digital transformation.
Okay, do you think that digital transformation is no longer optional for the manufacturing industry?
I mean, depending on the sector, there may be some very specific sectors in which you may still have a couple of years in which you can rely on labor competitiveness as part of your competitive advantage, but it's a no-brainer. I think that the future is going to be digital, and it's not, you know, if you are a tier 2-3 supplier based in whichever part of the world you are, you know, if the OEMs you are servicing are going digital, they are mainly thinking about having digital supply and value chain. So it's a no-brainer, and it's a no-brainer because you want to be integrated with global value chains that are going to be digital going forward. You want to be more resilient. You want to be able to respond to future changes, and you want to stay competitive. So yes, I think the answer is yes, and those are the main reasons of why.
For the inclusion of technologies in the industry, what will be the correct process to select some technology over others?
That was the other part of your question. I forgot to address it. Sorry. I think that, well, you know, what is important to note is that lighthouses are not talking about individual technologies. They are taking an approach in which they first look at what are the operational or business challenges they want to address, and then they scan and look at the technology landscape to find the right combinations of technologies that will help them develop the best possible use cases, right? Very rarely a use case is based on one individual technology. Very often it's a combination of, you know, industrial IoT, connectivity, AI, machine learning, but it's multiple technologies coming together to form and shape a new use case that will help improve your operations or the way in which you go to market. So that's an important concept to highlight. Now, if you ask me, what are some of the technologies that will most likely break through, or the new technologies? So IoT has been a priority for a long time, so it's a no-brainer. Automation, it's you know, has over 100 years of history, so it's not new as well. It will continue evolving. Of course, when it comes to computer science, you know, we are in a continuous evolution journey. I think that the top three that companies may want to look at and will most likely break through in the year to come are certainly 5G, because of this new speed that it can bring into the shop floor, you know, the ability to enable, end up and distribute it, you know, edge computing and a different speed and pace in which operations could be run in a specific site, but also across sites. The second one is certainly AI. We are seeing AI being taken to new levels and new frontiers. I mean, there are hundreds of different applications that you can power by the AI. They range all the way from predictive maintenance to demand forecast. So I think that the potential there is huge, and it's you will see more and more AI being big on the manufacturing map. And then the third one is probably additive manufacturing. As people think about there's a new generation of machines that is entering the market. I think that for the very first time, still at the early stages, but companies are starting to think about additive and distributed manufacturing as part of their strategy to diversify, build resilience, and be more local. So those would be my top three picks, but there are others in the pipeline as well.